Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, I'll call back into open session this meeting of the Arlington Independent School District Board of Trustees for November 1st, beginning at 7:10 p.m. Thank you all for coming out tonight. We'll start our meeting with the opening ceremony. Please join Dr. Cavazos in leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the pledge. Please join me in a moment of silence, and while you're doing that, silence your electronic devices. Thank you. Our opening ceremony tonight is the Sam Houston High School Symphony Chamber Ensemble, directed by Rosalind Waldorf. Ms. Waldorf has been the orchestra director at Sam Houston High School for 37 years. Welcome. Thank you to the Sam Houston High School Symphony Chamber Ensemble, directed by Rosalind Waldorf. Sam Houston's orchestra program. The first all-state orchestra student from Arlington was a member of the Sam Houston High School Orchestra. Former students of the orchestra are now members of the Hong Kong Symphony and the Symphony of Spain. They performed the Wire Choir Workout by Richard Stefan. One more round of applause for Great. Now to the business. First item on the agenda is to introduce newly elected DIDC members. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, I'd like to call Evan Smith, our Executive Director for Secondary Instruction, to introduce our members of the DIDC, or District Level Instructional Decision-Making Committee, and this is an important committee to guide our work in the area of instruction, and so I appreciate their service. And so, Evan, would you introduce the committee members?
I'm going to also ask Debbie Williams to come join me. As they line up, because we're going to ask them to introduce themselves here in just a moment to kind of tell the group that they represent. This is a very important committee for the district, and they give freely of their time and their energy to do the good works of this district. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Debbie Williams, who's kind of my co-partner in this, and I'm going to ask her to set up the introductions.
As Evan said, we're going to have each of the DIDC members to introduce themselves and tell who they represent on the DIDC committee.
Kathy Tucker at Young Junior High in the Martin Cluster.
Hello, I'm Connie Spence. I represent the principals. I'm principal at Cookin Education Center.
Sandra Guile, I'm at Lamar High School representing the Lamar Cluster.
Jeannie Peel, Nichols Junior High, Lamar Cluster.
Patty Belknap, Johns Elementary, representing Sam Houston Cluster. I'm also the co-facilitator.
Good evening, Barbara Reed, Lamar Cluster.
Becky King, Carter Junior High, Sam Houston Cluster.
Good evening, Karen Austin with the Arlington Chamber representing the community.
Dave McGarity from Bowie High School.
Brian Mercer from Owsley, the Seguin Cluster.
Marlene Roddy at Martin High School representing the Martin Cluster.
These are members of our new DIDC for this year.
Thank you. And thank you to the committee members for participating and giving of your time and talent. We appreciate it. Next, United Way, Dr. Marcelo Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, I'd like to call Kathy McFarland, our Language Arts Coordinator, to give us a brief report about the United Way Learning School Readiness Grant. And this is a grant that we've mentioned before publicly and have thanked the United Way for their support. And so here are some of the results of their investment in our community. So, Kathy?
Thank you. President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, thank you for this opportunity to share an update on the United Way grant and how we are utilizing it with our early readiness grant. You know, for what United Way chooses to do, one thing is to mobilize the community to impact education, and they feel very strongly about this. And so as part of their bold goal, they have increasing on-time graduations at United Way selected high schools by 20% by 2020. And for us, that means Sam Houston High School. So you might say, okay, there may be things that they do at Sam Houston. However, for us, we know that the research shows that there are many things that cause students to drop out, things that happen over the years. And so we have chosen for this grant to look at the early readiness for students to try to make them be more prepared for school readiness when they come to school. So it's with those efforts that we have selected our 18 feeder schools into Sam Houston. And when you look at these names of the campuses on the screen, I hope that you will know that out of approximately 4,100 pre-K 3-4 students that we have in the district, there are just under half of those students who are who go to school in these at these 18 campuses. So our part of the grant is very far-reaching. We cast a wide net with what we do. So if you think about the opportunities that are available for those students and for their families, it's pretty far-reaching. So when we look at our vision, we say that we need to provide opportunities for low-income 3- and 4-year-old children and their siblings birth to age 3 to develop age-appropriate social, emotional, physical, and cognitive skills needed for successful kindergarten entry. And I want to say, too, that ours is not just the students in our campuses and their families. If their next-door neighbor happens to have children who are birthed to age 3, they can come to our programs as well. And then the other emphasis is to build early homeschool relationships by engaging parents in their children's development and educational growth through a variety of literacy opportunities. And so it is important that we teach parents, those who need help, in looking at ways that they can help their students or help their children. And then the third one is to increase access to resources essential for literacy development. So how does this look? What kinds of things do we do? We have Toddler Time and Liesa Ross, and these are 6 weeks programs where parents or caregivers can bring their toddlers, their birth to age 3 children, to a campus, to one of the 18 campuses, and have a story read in both English and Spanish, to get a book to take home for their child to build in that family library that they have, and to work on all of these social type skills, as well as especially on building oral language. It's great that the English parents can hear the book read in Spanish, and the Spanish parents can hear the book read in English. So it's a language learning time for both. I'm showing you here just the faces of some of our kids in Toddler Time, and the part that is circled is just to show you that when the parents or caregivers come for 6 weeks, they are given sets of books or puzzles, shapes, colors, all kinds of things that they can take and work with their children on for having attended these 6 sessions. Other opportunities for our pre-K 3 and pre-K 4 children would be library field trips where students receive their first library card. There are literacy nights. Every campus has at least one, if not more, literacy nights. Families come for dinner. There's a literacy focus. A book is read. We have our end-of-year literacy celebrations. And last year, I remember many of you stopped by the one where Eric Litwin, the author of Pete the Cat, was at the PDC. And it was the night where we had the, I think it was the, who was it? Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, I was trying to direct traffic, so Dr. Cavazos was coming down the hall, and he saw me trying to direct the traffic, and he said, "Remember, Kathy, that's what we do. They are what we do," and that is very true for the with the little ones. So the next important thing that you need to know is that with their literacy assessments, we are looking at them at beginning, middle, and end of year. Students receive vision screenings and glasses, and these are by Kids Vision for Life. For dental health education, the second graders have sealants put on their molars. And then out of a focus group this year, or last year, parents asked for summer type programs. And so once a week through the month of June, we had over 300 who came to the summer programs. And when they came, they could, if they were studying about colors or about shapes, they received a book, they received an activity that they could take home and teach their child. Here's just more faces from the library field trip, from the literacy nights. And then we couldn't do this without our partnerships. And so, as I mentioned, the library program, that's with a collaboration with the Arlington Public Library. And then our dental health nutrition collaboration is with Dental Health of Arlington. And this year, we're changing that one a little bit in that instead of parents coming to school during the day when the sealants are put on the second graders' teeth, we're having 3 separate nights with 6 campuses coming together. And the parents will, it's for the parents and the pre-K students, and dentists will do checks on both the adult and the students' teeth. And so we're glad to add the dentist this year. We had the hygienist last year. The hygienist will still be helping this year. They've done a wonderful job, but it will be both this time. And then the National Association of School Nurses, they help to screen our students for their vision. And then the Kids Vision for Life, which is the collaboration of the Essilor Vision Foundation and Alcon Foundation, have provided now 482 pairs of glasses, and they still have 6 campuses to go this year. We want to just make you aware of a few of our celebrations. We could talk longer, but just think from year 1. This is now year 3. In year 1, we had 1,650 children participate. Year 2, 2,157. Year 1, 1,068 parents or caregivers, but second year, 2,142 parents and caregivers. So our numbers are growing, and they are growing by leaps and bounds this year. At the end of year 1, 405 students and families participated in the year-end celebration, but that night at the PDC, we had 1,620 attend the celebration. So those are all about numbers, but when we look at the next one, we have many pre-K children who participated in the grant-funded events have significantly greater gains on literacy measurements than children from the same schools who did not participate in the events. So with parents coming together to learn how they can help their children with literacy and with students being involved, then it helps them even with their achievement in school. Participants have also received numerous books to add to their at-home libraries, as well as other literacy-related materials. United Way gives themselves a report card, and what we have here shows what they're taking a look to see how effective their programs are. And our part would be in the early childhood category, and they look at reach. How far reaching was this program? And so for that, we've helped them decide they have an A there with early childhood. The impact on the participants, they've also given an A. And then the collective impact, how well they deal with partners, or we deal with partners, an A. And then a system change, where they're looking for, do we have a change in system, a change in culture, an A-. So that's the report card. And a brief update for you, but before I close, I do want to introduce Eleanor Ward. Eleanor, stand up, Eleanor. Eleanor is our United Way grant manager, and she's a pre-K specialist, and she's the one who puts the feet, the action to all of the things that you've just heard about. I can stand and say it, but she's the worker bee behind it all. So I thank her for all that she does. And then we want to thank United Way for providing $300,000+ a year, and like I say, this is year 3 for us, because it's with their generosity that we understand they're making a major investment in the lives of our AISD families. And I'd like to especially thank Tim McKinney, the president of United Way, Ann Rice, and Marilyn Jones for their help in seeing that this grant runs smoothly and helping us keep everything going in Arlington ISD. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Parlin. And just, could you stay just 1 minute?
Sure.
Just in case anybody wants to say anything to you. I firmly believe that if we can get the kids before they get to school and we can teach them how to read, then our problems will be solved.
That's right.
Board members, Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Aaron. Ms. McFarland, Ms. Wood, correct? Ward. Thank you so much. I was close. I also serve as a board member on the United Way of Tarrant County, and United Way is very special to me. It's not always the glitziest or most glamorous out there problems they deal with. issues like this, getting kids to read. So I thank you for this. This is a big initiative United Way took on. It takes a lot to tackle this also, and it's a new objective, and it's very bold goals that we tackled. I would ask, I know how much United Way tracks every single thing. How are you guys working with them to help promote this, to make sure the rest of my colleagues on the United Way board understand the positive events that are coming from this event?
They haven't. They did invite us back in September to come to a board meeting and to explain our data system. And in that presentation, we were able to tell them the good things that we are doing here and invited them to attend any of the events that they would like to attend.
Okay, perfect. We've got to promote. This is not, you got to fight for this grant every year. So make sure United Way is committed. And Tim McKinney, and a long time ago, Arlington was a little bit ignored by United Way, and we have to thank our leadership at United Way for really making sure, understanding how important Arlington is in this whole thing. I would also ask, with these students, I'd hope we're tracking these students, because I think the determination is the third grade success rate of reading on level. We are planning to track the students.
Yes, they are being tracked. And I know that it was a little difficult in the beginning because you have so many students who do not have IDs because all of the birth to age, birth through 2. But now that we have them in school, it's much easier to track. And our the point on the slide that I made where scores have increased for those who've attended United Way events, we were able to track that through scores that are now our kindergartners.
Great.
So we're linking back to before they entered school and especially their pre-K scores.
Just as much as we can track, I think it's critical. This is one of those areas, our whole board and Dr. Costas, we all talk data. This is one where we do have to track this, see the results, because it can be a very nice model to show many other United Ways, other districts, how successful this has been, putting our focus on these before they even truly get to us and are in our full-fledged in our system. The last thing, thank you, ladies, so much. Last thing I'd like to say is congratulate AISD. This year they run a United Way campaign. It was the first year in many years that all of our staff met the goal of the United Way campaign of fundraising. So that does mean a lot. It's not the easiest economy, and working on staff to get it out. So I thank Leslie Johnston and the rest of the staff that helped run that United Way campaign to fundraise that. Thank you for all your help.
Thank you. Dr. Cavazos, NCLB.
Thank you, President Barron. At this time, we'd like to present our No Child Left Behind highly qualified teacher compliance update as part of the NCLB, and Marilyn Evans will make that presentation. Marilyn?
Good evening, President Barron, members of the board, and Dr. Cavazos. Annually, we come to you with this report on our NCLB compliance for our 100% progress toward highly qualified status for our teachers and our paraprofessionals. The No Child Left Behind Act requires that we bring you this public report annually, and the No Child Left Behind Act requires that 100% of our teachers in the core subject areas be highly qualified. The core subject areas are defined as English Language Arts Reading, Mathematics, Science, Foreign Languages, Civics and Government, Economics, History, Geography, Music, which includes band and choir, Art and Theater, and also dance. Highly qualified is, a teacher is considered highly qualified if they hold a minimum of a bachelor's degree and they obtain their Texas teacher certification. That includes any certification that they might have in special education, as well as demonstrate subject proficiency. That would be by taking the required SBAC certification test in their subject area. We are pleased to announce that we are 100% highly qualified as a district, as well as 100% qualified in each class that is taught and 100% highly qualified at each of our campuses. You can see from this slide that Arlington ISD has maintained that 100% qualified status over the last 5 years, as well as previous years, and the state of Texas is on its way to meeting that goal as well. You can see at the state level for last year of 11-12, at the state level, it was 99.84 for classes taught, and then at the high poverty campuses in the state of Texas was at 99.64, and as far as highly qualified teachers in the state of Texas, 99.6. So as a district, we are leading ahead of the state, and we are quite pleased that our principals are able to maintain that as they hire teachers across the district. Highly qualified paraprofessionals also came into effect in 2008 as a requirement for the 2008-2009 school year, and the state requires that only at our Title I campuses. However, we have broadened that scope in our district to have it district-wide, so that as paraprofessionals transfer within the district, we do not have to be concerned about that paraprofessional transferring or being limited to only highly qualified campuses where they can go at, that would be Title I campuses. So we've broadened that to be across the district. To be a highly qualified paraprofessional, you must hold a minimum of an associate's degree or higher, or that can be 48 hours, semester hours of postgraduate study. Or if you don't have that, you can demonstrate proficiency in a local assessment, which our paraprofessionals can do that through a locally and administered test at our personnel office in the area of reading, writing, and mathematics. So if they can demonstrate ability to assist our students in reading, writing, and mathematics through a locally developed test, we deem them highly qualified. So our district has met that qualification in paraprofessionals as well. At this time, we want to thank our principals across the district for their commitment and ensuring that all our teachers are highly qualified at the time of hire or as they reassign them across the district. And this report will be filed on our website as well as on the TEA website. At this time, I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. First off, it's great that we're on target like that. That's wonderful. I was curious for the teacher requirements. One of them has obtained a Texas teacher certification. So what do we do in our district to address those folks that come in from other careers that are alternatively certified? Do they go through a teacher certification as part of an automatic requirement in our district?
Yes,
then,
the state consider those applicants who come to us as alternatively certified as highly qualified because they do have a minimum of a bachelor's degree. They do demonstrate proficiency in the subject area by taking the appropriate exam, and then they're on their way to they hold a provisional certificate and they're on their way to a standard certificate. But during that 1 year time when they are alternatively certified, they do consider that in compliance.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Evans.
Okay, thank you.
We have no administrative appointments tonight. Brings us to our public hearing. Next, I'll open the public hearing on Schools First, State Financial Accountability Rating. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. The Texas Education Agency has released its 2012 Financial Accountability Ratings for all Texas school districts. State law requires each district to hold a public hearing to discuss its ratings and to invite public comment on the rating. Tony Drollinger, Executive Director of Finance, will present a report on our financial accountability rating. Following his report, we invite the public comment on the rating. Mr. Drollinger.
President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos, good evening. Schools First is the system used by the Texas Education Agency to evaluate the overall effectiveness of school district financial management. Of course, as TEA is prone to do, it is an acronym. It stands for the Financial Integrity Rating System of Texas. AISD's rating, I'm pleased to say, for 2012 is the highest rating available, which is Superior Achievement, and that also is the same rating that we received last year. Schools First uses 20 indicators to evaluate the quality of school district financial management. This number goes up and down over time as different circumstances warrant TEA to change the indicators, but for this year it was 20. Items tested include things such as fund balance, administrative cost, tax collection percentages, student-teacher ratios, and audit findings, and the audit opinion. And based on data, for this year, this Schools First was based on data for the 2010-2011 school year and fiscal year. Now, based on the score on the 20 different indicators, TEA assigns one of 5 possible ratings to school districts, as seen here. Superior Achievement is the top of the list, and it goes down to suspended data quality. Now, districts that get either of the lower two, the substandard achievement or the suspended data quality, they have to file a corrective action plan with TEA to explain how they're going to overcome those ratings. School districts are required to issue a financial management report that includes the school's first evaluation from TEA for the current year. The report has to show the prior year evaluation from TEA, and it has to contain disclosures of certain information about transactions with the superintendent and the board members. Each district must also hold a public hearing on its school's first rating and the financial management report. Copies of the AISD 2012 report are available outside the boardroom this evening. They will be online tomorrow under business information section of the district's website. Of course, they can always contact the finance department as well for a copy of that report. Tonight's meeting does satisfy the requirement for a public hearing on schools' first ratings. One other place, TEA also posts or publishes the school's first ratings for all districts, so you can go there as well. At this time, I'll be happy to answer any questions, and it's appropriate to invite public comment.
Mr. Hibbs.
Mr. Drollinger, I appreciate you. I appreciate our accounting and finance staff led by Ms. Powell. You guys are the finest in the state, not in the country. I mean, I just want everybody in the audience, anybody that happens to watch this, we've got a group of people that are watching our funds, and there's no one better out there. They're doing a tremendous job. I've served on the audit committee for the 3 years I've served. We're going to have a representative from outside audit group coming up tonight to talk to us about the external audit, and they have found our group that works to keep the financial matters with the AISD sound. And there's no finer people, and I just want to compliment you, the entire staff.
Thank you, Mr. Excellent. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. We have no comments from the audience, so the public hearing on schools' first state financial accountability rating is now closed. That brings us to the open forum for agenda items. This is a routine part of the school board's agenda for regularly scheduled meetings. This segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to share their views with trustees on items that are on the agenda tonight. It is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not reply to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. Personnel matters are not appropriate for the open forum. I have 2 cards tonight from the audience. When your name is called, please step to the podium. You will have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there is 1 minute left for you to complete your presentation, and when the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. Our first speaker tonight is Richard Gonzalez. Subject is the school calendar 2013-2014. Good evening, Mr. Gonzalez.
Good evening, school board members, Dr. Cavazos. 2 events took place during the last 6 months that have a bearing on the school calendar 2012-2013. On May the 5th, 2012, Cinco de Mayo, Helen Chavez broke a champagne bottle against the hull of a ship and said, "I Christian the USNS Cesar Chavez. May God bless this ship and all who sail her." Secretary of the Navy Ray Mabus said, "Cesar Chavez inspires young Americans to do what is right and what is necessary to protect our freedom and our country." The Chavez family relented to the naming of the ship, a warship, after they were told that the ship would be used to carry supplies like food and ammunition to other ships. As you know, Cesar Chavez was a man of peace. Assistant Secretary of the Navy Juan Garcia said, "This is the perfect name of an American hero who embodied American values that will inspire a generation of sailors, as Cesar Chavez was a sailor back in 1946 and 47. On October 8, 2012, in Nuestra Reina de la Paz, California, President Obama dedicated the Cesar Chavez National Monument, the nation's first such site to honor a contemporary Mexican-American. This event is a follow-up to last year's action by Interior Secretary Ken Salazar, adding Cesar Chavez residence at La Paz, California, on the National Register of Historical Places. President Obama said, "Today, La Paz joins a long line of national monuments stretching from the Statue of Liberty to the Grand Canyon, monuments that tell the story of who we are as Americans. It was a time of great change in America, but too often that change was only expressed in terms of war and peace, black and white, young and old," Obama said. "No one seemed to care about the invisible farm workers who picked the nation's food, bent down in the beating sun, living in poverty, cheated by growers, abandoned in old age, unable to demand even the most basic rights. But Caesar cared. And in his peaceful, eloquent way, he made other people care as well. Where there had been once despair, Cesar gave workers a reason to hope. What the growers didn't know, he said, was that it was not bananas or grapes or lettuce, it's the people. Chavez believed that someone who worked 12 hours in the field can earn enough money to put food on the table and save up to buy a home that lifts the entire economy. Here we are, November 1st, 2012, All Saints' Day. Considering a school calendar for the 2012-2013 school year, I respectfully request that you allow the naming of a school holiday in the name of a person that many in this country consider a hero of the poor, the working class, the salt of the earth, and dare I say, a saint. I request that at this time we do not have the community, or the communities, because of the timing, isn't aware of what the calendar committee is recommending, and I think it's coming up here at the next agenda item, that the board postpone the approval or disapproval of the school calendar to allow for more community input. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Gonzalez. Our next speaker is Mr. Luis Castillo. Subject is the school calendar, 2013-14. Mr. Castillo? Okay. That brings us to our action items. The first item is to consider the student device policy. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. This evening, we'd like to bring back the bring your own device policy that the board reviewed during our last work session. And so we've taken the recommendations and the discussion from the board and made the appropriate updates, and Mr. Harvey will present the revisions to the proposed changes. Mr. Harvey.
Mr. Barron, Dr. Cavazos, members of the board, at the October 18th school board meeting, we discussed and presented the Bring Your Own Technology guidelines. Based on some of the discussions we had, we've made some revisions that we're bringing back to you tonight. First of all, we worked on the order of some of those, and we have grouped them a little bit more logically, we think. The first two items on the revised guidelines are really the definition of Bring Your Own Technology. 3 and 4 are the actions that students should take about the technology that they're bringing to school. 5 through 10 really address acceptable use guidelines. 11 through 16 are how employees will interact with the BYOT program. And then number 17 has to do with personal use. Some of the revisions that we made was on item 1. We reworded it to stress that the BYOT program is an educational program for using technology in the classroom, and that it is controlled by the teacher. The teacher determines when it will and will not be used. We revised item number 4 to stress that Students should bring their devices to school fully charged. As we work on training materials with teachers, we'll put in some suggestions and ways that teachers might address energy management within the classroom during the day for those devices that students are bringing. Item number 5 was revised to stress that students are responsible for the student code of conduct, the acceptable use guidelines, and the BYOT guidelines at all times. We revised item number 9 to stress that students must have permission from teachers for each individual assignment or project where they would be using a camera to either take a still photo or a movie. That once granted, it doesn't say that they can do that at any time. It's project by project and assignment by assignment. Number 17 was revised to address non-instructional uses of technology, and what we have modified it to say is that high school students may use the technology devices for personal use before and after school and during lunch. Elementary and junior high students may not use devices for personal use during the school day. The school day is actually defined in our student code of conduct as related to technology, is that for students on campuses, the school day is defined as from the time a student first enters the school building for the day until the last dismissal bell of the day. So while they are in school, junior high and elementary students would not be using their devices for personal use. A timeline that we put together for implementing the program. We presented last 2 weeks ago to you the guidelines. If you choose, you will approve those guidelines tonight. We will then start working with the code of conduct people to work these changes into that program. In November and December, we will create materials for teachers, for students, and for our parents on introducing the program to them. January, we would review the teacher materials with our principals. February, the principals would conduct their staff developments. February and March, the campuses would work on implementing the program within their buildings to be completed by March the 29th. Also, at the last meeting, we talked a little bit, kind of not really directly related to the BYOT program, but talked a little bit about Facebook and Twitter and access to those for personal use in the building. We did survey districts in the area, and for Facebook, no district is currently allowing access to Facebook during the school day or through the school's network. There were 2 of them that allow Twitter. Within our district, we actually provide some tools and provide staff development to teachers for some tools that give some similar capabilities. One of them that is really very popular with our teachers, and we have a lot using it right now, is called Edmodo. And it's a collaborative work area that's protected, is for students only. You control who has access to those things, and that's one that we're using right now. Project Share also has some collaborative tools in it. That's a TEA provided tool that again is for the education community. It started off, it was just a teacher tool, really primarily for staff development and collaboration with teachers, and now they have brought students online to that as well, and there's a number of opportunities for students to utilize that. And then also in the district we use Google Docs, but what's unique about Google Docs is Google actually provides school districts the ability to put Google Docs within their own domain. And so then that, again, gives us that protection. So it's not the big Google Docs that everyone has access to. It's the Google Docs within the AISD domain, again, which makes it a protected area that students can collaborate with themselves, between students and with teachers, and do that in a way that is protected. So those really are the tools that we have provided to students and teachers related to collaboration. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Dr. Reich.
Thank you, President Barron. I'm happy that we're discussing this tonight and that we'll be surely voting the approval of this. Before making a motion, I have just a couple of questions and clarifications. First off, on item number 9, is that regarding recordings, is that specific to images, or is that audio also?
We don't mention audio right now. We certainly could add that to it.
Well,
right now, it's really images and video, which of course would include audio. We weren't directly addressing just an audio recording.
Okay, and the reason I ask is I mean, when I read that, my immediate thinking was, so our kids, unless the teacher gives permission, which I think could be a blanket situation, are they not allowed to record lectures, say at the high school or junior high level? So I just want to make sure that we're thinking about all of that, because I know for me, when I go to meetings or when I teach, everybody's always using an audio recording device. So I just want to make sure that we're not hampering our students' progress on that learning opportunity. And could you please tell us what that official policy definition was of the school day again?
Yes, and again, this is from the Code of Conduct.
Okay.
That we publish, and it's for students on school campuses. The school day is defined as from the time a student first enters the school building for the day until the last dismissal bell of the day.
Okay. Okay. The reason that I was asking about that specifically, I think what we have is specifically regarding personal use is a great is a great way to approach it as far as the autonomy that we're giving to our elementary and junior high campuses for that personal use. I've visited with most junior high leadership, and the responses were varied. The majority said, well, before and after school is fine. Some had a difference of opinion of what that before school was, whether it was in the building or not, which is why I'm asking about this policy definition as far as what's in the Code of Conduct. That might need a little bit of tweaking to satisfy all the needs of our junior high campuses right now, because what you've defined is once they enter the building. I think some of the schools are saying they're okay before that bell rings in the morning, once they enter the building under certain situations. So I don't know if there's something that we can do. It would probably be the student code of conduct
Correct.
change. So I just be mindful of that,
Okay.
just to make sure that we're meeting the needs. As far as what the junior high said with lunch, most agreed, let's not do it. But there were some that were very interested in saying, hey, let's give them the chance. Let's give us the chance as the educators to provide teachable moments and give the kids the opportunity for responsibility to better prepare them as they transition on to high school, where they are going to have that reign of freedom and that self-responsibility and digital citizenship to be aware of. So given that, and I know ultimately we're going towards an MPE model where the individual campuses will have that choice, this might be a separate situation or something that, for me as one trustee, I'd like us to see how this goes and maybe bring this back to us with some kind of a reporting mechanism that maybe we can open it up for the different campuses. If they choose to do it during lunch, let them take the stab at it. But otherwise, I think it's very comprehensive. I love the way you've reorganized everything and worded everything. Let's see. There was one other question that I had, but I didn't write it down, and I don't remember what it was. So I will go ahead and just release the floor. I'll let somebody else make the motion, but I just wanted to make sure that I brought those points up. And thank you, Mr. Harvey, for going through this. I know the overwhelming thing is everybody's excited and can't wait to get this going. I did remember. I spoke long enough where it came back. Regarding... I think I'm getting hissed by some of my fellow trustees up here. Thanks, team. You're going to make me forget it again. I'm going to have to keep talking. I really appreciate the timeline, the timetable of how this is going to be rolled out. Will the campus administrators have opportunity to help put some of those materials together as far as what's going out to the parents and the students in that whole education process?
Yes, we'll go through a process of bringing people in to help us develop that
Okay,
material.
good, because that's obviously something that we're driving is communication, collaboration. I just want to make sure that we don't push something out with just a couple of people and we're covering all the bases. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Pena.
going back to that item number 9, Dr. Reich, that you brought up, when I read this, I think I read it a little bit differently than you did. Because immediately my thought was the teacher will give permission based on the fact that a parent gave permission, because Mrs. Sullins and I recently attended an event where only the students who were allowed, whose parents had given permission for their photographs to be taken, there were only 30 in the whole school. And so the teacher knows which students those are, and if another student is taking pictures of another student, they have no idea whether that student's parents has given that permission. So that's how I interpreted this. This is why the teacher has to give permission for each project and assignment to record or take pictures. That's how I looked at this. So it was quite differently than the way you were looking at it. I was thinking about the parental consent. So that would be my concern in this area. And I don't know if that's how you wrote it, Mr. Harvey?
It was really written from the standpoint of that the teacher would be saying when it was appropriate for students to be taking photographs related to an instructional assignment in the classroom, that they're working, you know, on a PowerPoint and they need to take a picture to put into that PowerPoint. It was really written from that standpoint of when is it appropriate for the student to use the camera or the video recorder as a part of an instructional project. And just because the teacher says, yes, you can do it on this project, doesn't mean you can do it again the next day when it's something different, unless the teacher says, yes, for this project, we're going to utilize cameras or video recorders, which we currently use already in our buildings. This just applies to the personal devices that students have.
Okay. I mean, it's not like their papers are for dissertation and it's going to be published.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's for classroom assignments.
All right, but I still, you know, in the back of my mind, that's my concern, to protect the children. The other concern or curiosity I had, when you said access to Facebook and Twitter, none of the schools did that, and we kind of had this discussion. We know the kids can pull out their own device and do this if this is what they care to. I guess my question was, you know, in my kind of soapbox way at the last meeting, my question was, what about the teachers? And so this is a totally different area as far as that's concerned, but that was where I was going with all of this.
In the past, our web filter did not differentiate between students and teachers. And so whatever policy we had in place, according to that filter, really applied to all users. We actually are in the process of putting a new product, a new web filter in place that allows us to differentiate between groups. And so now we actually have that capability. And we haven't looked at it yet really from the standpoint of Facebook, but a place that we have looked at it and have started to apply it is from YouTube. Where we have some of the same issues, but there's a lot of good educational content in YouTube. And so we have now granted our teachers access to that so that they can utilize that access within the classroom and not student access. And so we now are to the place where we can begin to look at some of those policies that we put in place in the past and determine, okay, what access do we want to give teachers? Do we want to give them access to Facebook, to Twitter, any number? We can control it now group by group. And so I think we'll now need to go back and start to look at some of those things, because in the past it wasn't an option and now it is.
Okay. And I guess finally, the other thing, Dr. Rice, you brought up about letting the schools do whichever and seeing how it falls in place. Mr. Pompa at our last meeting kind of alluded to the fact of doing much like a beta testing and either selecting a cluster to make that choice and seeing how it goes, or to select different levels of schools at different clusters. I don't know what direction specifically he was going with that, but I think you all are on the same page as far as allowing, and I don't know if you want to limit it or if you want to just allow the entire school district to do so. So I guess I'd ask what direction you're wanting to go. I haven't made a decision as to how far reaching I want this to go yet.
Well, when I brought that up, specifically wasn't thinking of any specific direction, just thought it would be something for us to look at again in the future, that I think we've got a great rollout plan defined right now. But based on that feedback, then we can assess further, at which point maybe some type of rollout for a more expansive opportunity for the campuses might exist.
And you're right, because I've been hearing across the school district, me first, me first. You know, everybody wants this. It's a good thing.
Mr. Pompa.
Thank you, President Barron. I want to talk about specifically the junior highs and the elementaries. Tell me about the decision to limit the use of during the school day to only the high schools and not the junior highs.
It really went back, I think, kind of along the lines of some of the things that Dr. Reich was talking. When we surveyed our principals at the high school level, it was unanimous that they thought that it was appropriate and to allow that personal use during lunch. But at our junior highs and our elementary, it was much more mixed. Junior highs is probably about 50-50, and our elementaries, it was swayed more to the don't allow it. And so kind of based on that and some of the conversation where, you know, maybe we should start up a little slower, it was decided that was our recommendation. Let's not do anything at junior high and elementary right now. We can come back and review it later and decide if we need to change that, but go ahead and allow it at the high school.
Did you consider allowing the campuses where the principal said there's 50-50, so there were some that said, yes, we want it, to allow them to have it, try it out, see if they liked it, and if it was something that worked, then we could expand it to the other campuses that maybe didn't want it initially, but then once they saw how it worked, it might.
We did not have those discussions. We were really looking more at trying to put together a standardized policy, but, you know, we can certainly look
Well,
at it.
I'm going to be the advocate for the junior highs because I have junior high students, so I'm around a lot of junior high kids all the time. I had a big bunch of them at my house yesterday, and they're pretty responsible with their technology. They utilize it quite a bit. There's probably not a day that we're doing homework that she's not using her cell phone for something, either looking something up or communicating with one of her classmates or something like that. So I'd prefer to open that up to the junior highs and leave it up to the principals if they want to do it, and their campus fine. If they don't want to do it, then they don't have to. Okay. And then we talked a little bit about the passing periods. Why'd you pull out the passing periods specifically, especially at the high school level?
Again, really based more on the feedback we had in the survey, that there was no one who really was in favor of that. I mean, there were a few who said it didn't matter to them, but in general, they were not in favor of granting access then. I think really more of a management of time and students getting, slowing them down between classes and just, there's not much time. We've kind of, I think, cut down that time between classes as we've tried to increase instructional time. And I think it was just as a way to help manage that time better. But there was not a lot of support in the surveys that we ran to provide that access between classes.
Yeah, I guess I just see that we're giving them the tools, we're allowing them to have it, but yet not just during those small periods of time. It's kind of odd. We say we trust you to be responsible, to bring it, to follow the rules and everything, but all day except during passing periods just seems a little inconsistent with the message that we're sending, I think.
Even though the message we are sending during the day in the classroom is that it's at teacher direction when it's appropriate and the teacher says to use it in the classroom. It's not that they're using it in the classroom all the time. It's when the teacher is saying for an instructional purpose, we're going to use your device. Mm-hmm. At lunch, you can use it as you please, but in class, that's really not the case.
Okay, well, I would like to hear what my colleagues think about the consideration of adding the junior highs as to have the same structure as the high school, as long as the principals are comfortable with it. Thank you.
Mr. Hibbs.
One thing I want to clarify here. We're saying that at the junior high and even the elementary level, if a teacher says it's electronic day, you can bring your electronics, whether it be an iTouch, an iPad, an iPhone, and they're using it for instruction in class, it's available at all levels.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was wanting to make sure that we were all talking about. Everybody's going to have this. At the high school level, we're saying that before, after school, and at lunchtime, because it offers a time that it's not going to be interfering with the daily routine. Passing periods are about 5 minutes. I know at Bowie, kids were telling me it's hard for them to get from one hall to the other hall across the campus on time. And Dr. Rice just made a clever comment to him that we're going to probably have to put in effect a no texting while walking policy if we allowed all these people to begin texting between the classrooms. I mean, because 5 minutes, by the time you leave a class to get to the next class, goes by too quickly. Yes. I mean, I sat in a truancy hearings yesterday, and one of the things is all the students were saying, I don't have enough time, that's why I'm always late to my class. And, you know, maybe I think that I would support the policy, you know, as long as all the schools have access to the devices. And, you know, at lunchtime I don't have a problem with, but during the passing periods, I can see where that could delay timely instruction. So that would be my 2 cents that I would throw in at that point.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Harvey, this is a question that I just got to ask, because it does say a teacher approved. Does that also include administrators? If they're doing
As to granting access?
Group project?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I mean, just as teacher, that's why I'm asking.
Teacher, yeah,
so making sure we imply that it also means administrator.
Yes.
The last piece I'd say, Mr. Hibbs, I agree with you. You know, going through class, I think from the dawn of day, students are never have enough time, and they're always going to push that limit on being tardy. I think it's not our decision to make. I think it's the principal's decision. I think we have to have faith in our principals, the campus leader of each campus, and let them make the decision. They either say, yeah, you can use it during passing periods, and no, you can't use it during passing periods. I think the same thing on junior high and elementary. Let that principal, maybe it's an incentive they use for the students. You're doing the right things. We allow you to use it during passing periods. If you're not, you pull it off. I would recommend we pull off number 17 as a whole on there, get rid of it all, and let each campus leadership make that type of decision under their own campus policy. I just personally think we're over-policing something right here and saying, hey, let's let our senior staff at each campus make that decision.
Mrs. Pena.
I don't have a problem with the junior highs having the exposure to the technology as well. I do want to remind the board that we have the student leaders that we talk to, and they are the ones who emphasize that they didn't think that the students should be allowed to use their technology between classes. And they gave us various reasons why. That most of the time the reasons the kids are late are because they are texting. Even though they're not supposed to be doing it still under current policy, they are texting, and the texting becomes more important than getting to the class. I mean, they emphasized that to us. We sat there and listened to them saying it. It was the students themselves who said it wasn't a good idea. So, you know, hearing it from them convinced me it was not a good thing. I mean, it's really literally true. If you walk and text, you're not paying attention to where you're going as well. So that part I kind of have a problem with, but the rest with the junior high usage, I don't have any concerns.
Mr. Pompa, you're flashing.
Thank you, President Barron. I didn't realize I was flashing. I agree with Mr. Hogg, just removing number 17, and allowing the principals to decide what makes sense for their particular campus. I'd be perfectly okay with it. I think that's a better way to do it, and that way we're not being over prescriptive in terms of how we're designing this policy and allowing for that local control. you know, we're going that way. This is an easy one to give to them to figure out how they want to do it. And we heard half of the junior high principals want something like this, half of them don't. Well, that's great. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it. If you do, then go for it. So I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Mrs. Sullins.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Harvey, would the fine be in place at any campus still? You know, currently we charge $15, and parents have to go pick up the phone in the office. I know that's very inconvenient for parents. Would that remain intact?
Well, I think that's something we'll have to look at as we revise the student code of conduct and bring people in and give us input on that, because that's really a code of conduct issue. And so we'll need to now revisit how we're going to do that and work with some principals to make that decision.
Thank you.
Dr. Reich. Five, four, three.
Oh, sorry. I didn't realize I was flashing there either, President Barron. Just in response to Mr. Hogg's suggestion, I think it's a good idea. I would like to open it up to hear what Dr. Cavazos would have to say. If you see anything that we're not thinking of that's going to create any problems or issues, or are you okay with that? Are we good to roll this out that way?
Well, I think that one thing we have to keep in mind is that we would come back, and I think I've mentioned this before, that we would come back with how it's going with our implementation and make necessary adjustments as we move forward. This is new for the district. I think that allowing the principal to have some say in that is okay. But I think we'd have to come back to the board and as a group look to see how the implementation is actually taking place. I think what Mr. Harvey and his team have found out from visiting with other districts is that a lot of these things don't end up being an issue at all. And they have learned some of the lessons is that they've overthought some of these things, and they would suggest that we not overthink some of these things and these things work out. But in terms of principals having control and decision-making over that, I think that's appropriate.
Do you see any issue or have any risk of making it subjective from campus to campus as it would then concern the code of conduct?
I think in terms of the actual, and we're limiting to the use of passing periods and then during the day, I think is what you're taking out number 17 basically and letting the campuses decide that. Then I think we would define that at the school level, at the campus level, and that's fine. I think that as we go forward, the campuses that aren't allowing it, for example, will learn from those that are, and the other way too. We could take the other approach where we have one standard for everyone and then come back to the board and see if there's a need to change it and be more flexible. So it could really go either way in terms of coming back to the board for more information as to how it's going. Again, some of these things take care of themselves, but we just have to be clear who has the authority to decide that, the principal or do we want one standard? Mr. Harvey, in your discussion with principals, did they have one way or the other in terms of standardizing or having some control over it?
We didn't ask that question, but there was no, they were saying what they would like to do on their campus is really what the survey was, and there was just a disagreement, not even disagreement, there was a difference of opinion as to what they wanted to do on their individual campuses.
On their campus.
Dr. Rice, a real quick one, then we're going to do something different.
Okay. I would think that we should probably have some kind of statement in here then as far as the personal use. You know, redraw 17 that it is campus specific. We got to make that specificity. I would also say that whether that's policy or district procedure, that each campus submit what their campus policy or procedure is to central office so that we have that clearly documented, so there's no case of a kid getting disciplined for something they didn't think they had to because that campus was different.
Okay.
So I think that's very important. Thank you.
I'm surprised that we didn't get any input from the teacher associations on this, because we're dropping a lot on the teachers to enforce all of this new policy. Also, we don't have a line of teachers sitting right there saying, put me in, coach. I want to do this. We don't have a line of principals doing it, and we don't have anybody saying, I don't want to do it either. I'm disappointed. Regarding the junior highs and the elementaries, I like the policy as it was written. Passing periods, this will be chaos because we're not differentiating between the electronic devices which are authorized and plain old cell phones. So as soon as the kids get in the hall, you're going to see everything's going to come out, and now teachers have to decide that's a cell phone, you can't use it. That's an electronic device, that's okay. What? Not a plain old cell phone. I'm against passing period. Regarding recording images and recording voices, there's a real danger here with anybody taking somebody else's picture and posting it. We violate a bunch of laws there, I believe. Law lady? Ms. Castillo? I know that we need permission from parents for their children's pictures to be posted online. And once we open up the floodgates here and anybody can take anybody's picture, then we might have an issue.
I think student to student is, I think we can do our best to control it, but ultimately FERPA is about what the district does, what teachers do as far as audio recording of a student's voice, and those types of things. So although I can see a situation where if there's a class discussion, you know, arguments over whether or not something is an educational record if you're discussing in class, but I mean, I think it's, when it's student to student, there's not a whole lot we can do, and that's not a FERPA concern for me. It would be more, what does the district have control over, and whether or not the district has a pattern and practice of releasing or creating student records and being willy-nilly with them, if that makes any sense. So,
Okay, I'm going to express the same concern.
I'm sorry.
The concern is we have a vast majority of our parents who did not sign the form and said it's okay to take my kid's picture, and for whatever reason, some of them could be very serious. They're hiding from the estranged husband and all that.
Right.
And once we start posting pictures or allow kids to take these pictures and post them, we could have some trouble.
And I think that could go back to, you know, some kind of, you know, agreement, technology agreement that we use. If we're going to let the kids use them for instruction, then that's part of the agreement when you use your device, and that you're not going to abuse it, and a reason we can take it away.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I will entertain a motion. Mr. Hogg.
Thanks, President Barron. I would like to make a motion for the policy as drafted by the district to be approved, amending number 17 to read at the discretion of campus leadership.
Read the whole 17 then.
Wow. I was going to give staff a little leeway to wordsmith that a little better, but I can definitely make one up pretty quick. Use of student-owned technology devices for personal purposes will be determined by campus leadership.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Mrs. Sullins. Is there any further discussion? Please vote. Six one, the motion passes.
Thank you.
I saw you thinking.
I saw you go back and forth.
That brings us to consider changes to board policy EIE local. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. Last work session, we discussed policy EIE, the reclassification of students who are behind their peer or cohort grade level to be reclassified the first opportunity that they can be in terms of when they obtain credit. And we bring that back for your approval.
I move to approve policy as presented.
Second?
Motion to approve the update on EIE local. Motion by Dr. Reich, second by Mrs. Sullins. Any discussion on EIE local? Please vote. All voting in the affirmative, the motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to consider approval of the fiscal year 2011 and 12 independent audit. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. The independent audit for the fiscal year 2011-2012 has been prepared and has been discussed in the dinner meeting, and we recommend the approval.
Can we hear from Mr. Yabel?
My name's Chuck Yapel. I'm the partner with Whitley Penn on the audit for Arlington ISD, and we have completed the audit, annual and financial compliance audit for Arlington Independent School District, and it is our opinion that the financial statements are fairly presented in accordance with accepted practice. As we have discussed throughout the process, which the audit process takes about 6 to 7 months, culminating tonight in an approval of the audit report for submission to the Texas Education Agency. The district did have a change in fiscal year end this year. This is the first year that the district has had a June 30th fiscal year end. As auditors, we were impressed with the planning that went into that fiscal year end change, and I think that the results of the audit also point out the planning there. We did point out that the general fund at June 30th had an available fund balance of just over 4 months of operating expenditures, which is a conservative measure for purposes of emergency and the like. And the reports that we have provided on the financial statements and in accordance with the federal audit guidelines pertaining to internal controls and compliance are all positive reports, unqualified reports relative to our opinion on the financial statements and our opinion on compliance with federal guidelines. With that, I would like to say I appreciate our involvement with Arlington Independent School District in this regard, and would like to congratulate the board, certainly the finance staff, but essentially the entire staff of the district in having an audit of this type with no specific items to report for compliance or internal control purposes.
Mr. Poppy, did you want to say something? Mr. Hogg? Okay.
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Yapel, thank you so much. On behalf of Audit Committee, I think everyone up here on this board has served on the Audit Committee
Yes.
at some point.
I think you're right.
In their tenure in this board. It's not maybe the most fun committee, but maybe one of the most essential committees that we have. And no offense to our internal auditor in the back, but
I commend the board for their attention to this and the seriousness that is relayed by the board's action relative to the audit and the audit committee.
And Mr. April, and just all my colleagues know, but we did meet with, the audit committee did meet with Mr. Apel and our AISD staff. I must thank our external auditors, but maybe even more importantly, I must thank Brent and Tony and Cindy and all the finance staff for all the work. I know Brent did a lot, and I know even our auditors had a lot on that 10-month change. It's been a transition. I think everyone was looking at it, and then staffs realized how well it's made their calendar, but it's getting their calendar situated as we've gone on. I think it's been a good move for the district. It's required a little extra work, and I thank you as auditors. So on behalf of the committee, I make a motion to approve the approval of the fiscal year 2011-12 independent audit.
Thank you, Mr. Hogg, and I'll second that. No second. We're going to vote anyway. Please vote. Can we vote over there, folks? See what you do when you deal with children. This is what happens. 6-0, the audit is approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We appreciate it.
Thank you very
7-0,
much.
7-0. I can't count either. Thank you.
Thank you.
Never mind. Never mind. I tell you. Brings us to the calendar. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. And at this time, we'd like to share with you information about our proposed 2013-2014 school calendar. And Mr. Walker has had committee meetings, and he's here to provide a summary of those meetings. Mr. Walker.
All right. Star system, okay. I got it.
Mark.
I need some help. You're going to have to wait a few minutes. You shut it down, so it's got to cool off before I can start it up again. So, well, that's good. I think I planned that. All right. It really is going to take me a couple of minutes before we can turn this back on. So, let's better break.
Let's go without it.
Okay. President Barron, members of the board, Dr. Cavazos, tonight I'm here to present the proposed 2013-2014 calendar. And we have 32 members on the calendar committee. There were 17 parents, 3 students, 7 principals, 3 employee organization reps, 1 community rep, and 1 administrative representative. And some of those members are here tonight, and I just want to acknowledge them for their hard work and for all of their the teamwork and the input that they gave on the committee. So at this time, I would like for those committee members who are here to stand. Okay, we're ready now. Prior to our discussion and the recommendations, we wanted to view state law and the committee charge. This is what we need to do to guide the work for the committee. We also want to look at other school district calendars to see if we could capture any information from those calendars. We looked at Garland ISD calendar, Fort Worth, Plano, Kennedale, Mansfield, Birdville, Grand Prairie, Houston, Northside, Northeast, San Antonio, Clear Creek, and Deer Park. After viewing the calendar, some of our parents saw some information that they would like for us to include in our calendars. Registration days, state testing days, including PSAT, summer school dates, graduation dates, beginning and ending school times, grading periods, and early dismissal times. And this was something that some of the other school districts had as an attachment to their traditional calendar, and this is something that I think would be very helpful for our parents, and we can include that in our calendar as well. As we get into the recommendations by the calendar committee, the first day on October 22nd, first meeting day, one of the things that was discussed and recommended was to list names of federal holidays on the calendar and name other holiday students and staff holidays. The vote for that was 22 for and 1 against. The other recommendation on the 22nd of October was to have early release days for staff development. And as you know, the state will give you a waiver to have 6 early release days. We do have a waiver to have 6 early release days. 4 of those days are used for final exam days. There were 2 additional days that we could have used for staff development. But listening to the parents, students, and the teachers on the committee, they said they would rather have those days for instructional days. So the vote was 0 for and 22 against. On October 29th, on our last meeting, there was a recommendation to eliminate the May 2nd holiday, which is also a weather makeup day, and the rationale was to use this day as an instructional day, and that would allow school year to end on Wednesday, June the 4th, as opposed to Thursday, June the 5th, and also to move the 2 weather makeup days to the end of the calendar year. So those are the 2 recommendations that we'll bring to the board tonight. Is to list the names of federal holidays on the calendar and name other holidays, student and staff holidays, and to eliminate the May 2nd holiday, weather makeup day, and to move the 2 makeup days at the end of the calendar. And this is just some additional information that we will put on the calendar, important dates, first semester, as well as the second semester. The 6-week grading period, as you can see, first semester we have 79 days in the first semester, 98 days in the second semester, for total instruction days, 177 days. At this time, I will answer any question that you may have at this time.
Mr. Pompa?
Thank you, President Barron. Mr. Walker, can you tell us about the timeline and the formation of the committee and how it's constructed and all that, since that seems to come up?
Okay, yes. Prior to our meetings, I normally send information out to all of the calendar committee members, and the structure as far as selecting the committee members, we'll have all of our high school principals will select a parent and a student on the committee. I will contact 4 elementary principals and 4 junior high school principals. They will select a parent from their schools. The employee organization will select their representation, and I will select the principals on the committee as well as the community rep. And so what we do, we send information out probably a month or 2 months in advance to all the committee members to make sure they have the information. We send them the state law and the charge, as well as what was voted on previous years and what was recommended previous years by the board.
If somebody wants to serve on that committee, how can they get on there if they're not one of the elementaries that were selected, or I mean, is the principal the gatekeeper then in essence of who gets to serve on this committee?
Yes, that's the way it's been in the past.
And at what time, like general date time that this went out, did it happen back in April, May, June? When did this?
The information that I sent out was during the summer, and our committee was formed pretty much in August.
So the principals are forming this committee before school starts?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thanks.
Mrs. Pena?
Well, 2 things. One is, well, maybe 3. One is spring break a federal holiday?
No, it's not.
But it's on here as spring break. So it doesn't say student holiday, it doesn't have a federal holiday, but it says spring break. So this already doesn't do what you said you were going to do, or what the recommendation was.
Right. And that's what we looked at the other calendars, and it spelled that out as well. It says spring break, but they named the federal holidays. And we looked at one in particular, Plano's calendar, and that's basically what they're saying is it spelled out the spring break, and it also named the federal holidays, but other holidays they just said student staff holidays.
Okay, so there are exceptions.
I would say so.
Okay.
Ms. Pena, I just wanted to clarify, it says winter break, it's just a season, winter and spring.
No, well, I'm looking at this briefing.
Okay, I'm looking at the calendar.
Okay. No, I'm looking at the calendar and it says spring break too.
Correct, it also says winter. That's my point.
Okay, well, so we do make exceptions. That's my point.
Seasons, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's all I was
okay.
pointing out to you.
Because the guidance that he just said we will either name it a student holiday or we will name it after a federal holiday. And that was my point, because that was not the case here. Oh, the other thing is that I would propose to the board that we do get postponement and allow for community members who are not in any of those groups that were mentioned to have some input and have a dialogue. If there is a problem with having the dialogue with the community, that's one thing, but I think we should give them an opportunity at least to present whatever it is their concerns are about the calendar. We accept them or don't accept them, but not shut it down. So I'm requesting, or I would like to make a motion that we postpone making a decision on this calendar tonight. And you all know why. If you want me to say it, I will. Because there are people in the community who would like to have Assessor Chavez Day. And everybody here seems to have a reason for not wanting it. But Tony's pointed out to me that there has been no dialogue, and the dialogue can't happen if a shutdown is done.
Lacking a second, the motion fails. Mr. Pompa is going to be next.
Well, I was just going to ask something about specifically that. Tell us what the impact would be if we postpone it. If we postpone the approval of the calendar in terms of getting your timelines.
I don't think there will be any impact on it. Normally, we at least try to have it out first of the year, in January, but, I don't think that would, be an impact on it, on the calendar.
I guess before we decide whether we want to postpone it or not, first we'd want to know if we wanted to change the structure of the input for the calendar, because if we're not going to do that, then what's the point of postponing it? So would somebody want to create a different structure for community input to the calendar? If that's the case, then maybe that would be beneficial to postpone it. But if we're not going to do that, then what's the point of postponing it?
But I could make a recommendation on my own, just thinking that I know what everybody else is thinking, but that makes no sense. If you want to talk to the people and ask them, and if that's the recommendation and it doesn't happen, at least you had the discussion. Shutting people out is not the solution.
I'll second your recommendation to postpone it then.
I need a new motion, please.
I make a motion that we postpone approving this calendar until we have some discussion with more community members.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by Mrs. Pena, second by Mr. Pompa to postpone discussion on the calendar.
Yes.
Any discussion on the motion? Dr. Reich.
Yeah,
I'm going to clear all lights.
Yeah, on this particular item, I'm not really in support of it, because what we've done this year is no different than any other year I've been on this board. It came out to us a few weeks ago. We discussed it. It's come back now for us to vote on it. It's the same process, and I was thinking that when Mr. Gonzalez spoke earlier. It's the same process. There's been equal amount of time for the community to hear what we're doing. We have maybe different format, that it was just discussion in years past as a discussion item on a regular meeting versus a work session meeting, but it was still an item of discussion. It was still a meeting, still several weeks in advance of this meeting that we're taking the vote. So for me personally, I'm not going to support that for that basis.
Mr. Hibbs.
I'd like to remind the board, 2 weeks ago, we sat here at this meeting and we were doing what we call a work session. And during that work session, I brought up when this presentation was being made then, why do we have committees? Why does this district have committees? And everybody in unison told me because we want community impact, we want employee impact, our input. And then I said, are we going to agree with what comes out of committee then? If we're not going to find these committees to be useful, then why do we do them? This is foolishness. There is no reason that we go back and say, okay, because we don't get something necessarily that one person, I've received one discussion on that, and that was tonight by a presenter. I have not received any emails on this other than outside of 3 individuals over the course of the time that I've sat on this board. Guys, if we have something that comes to a committee and we as a board are appointing that committee, we're setting the outline and the directive for that committee, then we need to take the committee's recommendations and either say yay or nay. We didn't say that we're going to have public forums with this. The public forum is the opportunity for the individuals to come and speak tonight. This agenda was posted. People knew 2 weeks ago that this was going to be spoken about. There was plenty of time for public impact. This committee, Mr. Walker, have done their due diligence. They've done exactly what this board asked of them. I don't understand why we then come back to this point and say, I don't like it, so I'm going to take my ball and go home. So I'm going to recommend that we go ahead and vote on this motion, and then we go from there to vote yay or nay on the other.
Mrs. Pena.
Mr. Hibbs, I hear what you're saying, but my recollection of the meeting that we had was that the superintendent brought before us a request to give guidance to the committee, and we declined. We told him, we've always done this, just go ahead and do it and come and make a recommendation. And you said some key words there. You said involving the community. But it's the community that was selected already by some certain people. Outside people who don't have children in our school systems were not allowed a voice. So that's not inclusive of all the community. And efforts were made to get on the committee, but because they didn't know the timeline, they didn't make it. So efforts have been made to try and go in that direction. So if you're going to tell me that we need to listen to the committee, then we need to know who's on the committee and what the makeup of it is. And we didn't know that until tonight.
But isn't that what we should have been asking last week or 2 weeks ago when we had the work session and we discussed this?
That's what I'm saying. The opportunity was given to us, and everyone said, I mean, Mrs. Sullivan said, why is this being here? Why are we even involved in this? And then you asked, why a committee? And you used the key words to get the community involved. And my statements here are, we're not getting the community involved. There were people that were locked out. Maybe not by purposefully on our part, but it happened. And so I'm asking that the postponement be made so opportunity is given to the people who feel locked out to have some say. And we may not agree with it after that as well, but give the opportunity. Don't shut down. And it's difficult. Each time that I've had to bring this up, it's been very difficult. But I'll do it, and I'll do it until I'm not on this board if I have to, because people need to be listened to. That's what's right.
Mr. Papa.
Thank you, President Barron. I want to clarify that I don't think what I'm saying is I want to get into the calendar writing process. I mean, I'm not talking about that. And then the second thing is, yeah, we have committees, but we don't always do what they tell us to do. So there's plenty of time when a committee makes a recommendation, we do something different. So just because a committee said do this, we have done it time and again, we don't do exactly what they recommend. So, you know, we're not going to say, okay, just because we assigned a committee and they make a recommendation, we're going to always agree with it. So I don't think we want to say that. I think, and then the third thing is, you know, I missed this whole Cesar Chavez deal because frankly, I'm not focused on naming holidays in the calendar. That's not one of my priorities, so I wasn't thinking about it until Gloria brought up that she was going to bring it up today. And my attempt is to say, listen, what's the point of bringing up this holiday? Is it just because an individual wants a holiday named after somebody? Well, that to me is not sufficient. If the reason is that we want to find a way to celebrate our Hispanic culture in the district, if we want to do something to let the majority of our students know that your culture is important, it is respected, then I'm all ears. Then I'm open to a discussion. But if somebody's coming in and telling me, we want this date on the calendar and we just want it because we do, you know, I'm not going to support that. I'm open to the conversation. That's what I was telling Ms. Pena. I'm open to having a conversation about how best to go about doing that. It may be a name on a holiday, it may be something else, a different way. It may be something built into our curriculum that for an entire week we study about the Hispanic culture influence in Texas. There's plenty of other options to do this. And so my suggestion is, let's just step back. Let's talk about it. I don't think you're gonna get any pushback from people saying, no, we don't want to celebrate the Hispanic culture in Arlington ISD. I don't think that's it. Just like I felt last year that somebody came in and said, hey, we expect you to vote for this particular holiday just because you're Hispanic. That's not gonna work for me. That's just never gonna work for me. However, if you come to me and you say, we wanna have a conversation about this, then that's what I'm telling you, that I'm open to doing. I mean, I frankly think the calendar should be done by policy and, you know, get us out of it. And I don't want to get into naming holidays of different people. However, if we as a board said we want to do that, okay, let's do it. But that's not my interest, frankly. But I am supportive of figuring out a way to celebrating our Hispanic culture heritage in the community. I'm open to that. Thanks.
Mr. Hibbs.
I didn't think that, I think it wasn't cleared from last, but just something that Mr. Papa said, I'm totally for that. But guys, 2 weeks ago, I brought up, I said, why do we have a committee? Why don't we do this ourselves? The same thing that Mr. Papa said. And everybody looked at me like it was foreign. He says, because we've always had one. I said, okay, are we going to accept what the committee is going to do? Everybody said, yeah. So here we are, after a work session, we're ready to vote on something. I'm just asking you, if we're going to do these work sessions, and then we come to a time of voting, let's be prepared. We should have been asking these questions 2 weeks ago. We had that opportunity in that work session. That's what I'm saying. It was charged to the committee. At that time is the appropriate time to say,
And I said,
who are the
to get input
who are the
from
committee members?
We, the board, didn't give any of that direction to the administration. My recollection is we just said, do what you've done before and bring it back. And they did exactly what we told them to do. We didn't say include this number of people, make sure each of the clusters represented. We didn't do any of that kind of guidance. And I kept saying, when I talked, I said it's to get community input. So now we need to define what community is, because in my mind, we did not involve the community. And all I'm saying is this is a step forward. And if it doesn't get approved, whatever, this is a step forward to not cause that lockdown, that shutout, or even the perception of it. That's what I'm pleading here for. Don't even allow the perception of it. You know, I will do this until the cows fly across my house, if I have to, because I'm just trying to give us the step forward. Our strategic plan says we want to open up the community, have diversity, and be culturally sensitive. All I'm saying is we need to do that. And if this one little instance allows it, even the perception of it, then I'm for it. We've already been told that the delay will not cause any problems for administration or students, their education, none of those problems. But we can make a step forward and allow people to feel as they're part of our community. They have say, they are committed. And have used this term with you all before. They get skin in the game. Okay, that's all I'm saying. It doesn't mean that we'll agree to do any naming of the holiday, but we may do something else, as Mr. Papa said. Just allow the community to feel included. That's all I'm saying.
Dr. Cavazos, would you like to say something?
Sure. Thank you, President Barron. I just want to add that at a broader scale, as part of our strategic plan, we will get community input on their school and the treatment of people as they come into our school, their learning environment, things like that. So as part of the strategic plan rollout, if you recall in the spring semester, this semester we're reviewing survey instruments, preparing the school culture for that. I think, Ms. Peña, you're right. We haven't received large-scale input, not just on issues such as this, but a lot of issues in a context of engaging the community, engaging the parents, how they feel connected to our schools. So I think that in the spring, and we're going to bring back to the board surveys and things like that for your consideration, we will be getting input from the community at a larger scale that includes topics about how do we address the culture of the students we serve, how do we address your needs, how do we assist you to assist your children to meet learning objectives, what's the best instructional model, things like that. So on the one hand, you're right, we haven't received a lot of community engagement and survey and input, but not just on issues such as this, on a broader scale. And I just wanted to remind the board that as part of our strategic plan, that will be an effort in the spring semester, starting in the spring semester, and that's going to be our baseline. And we've talked a lot I've talked a lot with principals about how that's something that we're going to take that feedback and then make improvements upon the results that we get from our parents and the community. We have to hear at a wider scale in our community the feedback about our schools beyond one issue or another issue or 3 issues in general and a wide scale. So our schools are preparing for that, our principals are preparing for that. And as we roll out the strategic plan, that's what's coming in the spring semester, and we've had a lot of discussion about that. And the board has invested budgeted money. You've invested through a budget amendment for us to pursue those surveys and purchase those surveys and things like that so that we can get that feedback. Getting feedback from the community is an ongoing process. In relation to our district, it's something we're going to start in the spring, and it's a need that we have. But it's a process of making sure we get enough feedback, reporting it back, reporting it to our public, including people in helping us decide what kind of questions we should ask and things like that. So I just wanted to bring that up as a part of our strategic plan and efforts that we're going to see this year.
Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Thank you, Dr. Passos. If 2 board members ever want to put anything on a future agenda, they just got to ask and it's put on there. I think as far as discussion, my cell phone, my email address, like many other board members, is on the website and open and welcome and published. So anytime anyone wants to discuss anything from the community, they can. I'm ready to take a vote on Ms. Peña's motion.
Dr. Rice, one more thing. You're done. Thank you. Please vote. We're voting on the motion to pull the calendar off the agenda until the next meeting. A future one where we can vote. 5-2, the motion fails.
Mr. Barron, I'll make a motion to approve the calendar as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hogg, second by Mr. Hibbs to approve the calendar as provided by staff. Further discussion.
Just one quick question, something
Dr.
actually
Reich.
about the calendar.
Dr. Reich.
I just wanted to have a closing comment on our last vote. Can't do that?
You can only discuss on the motion at hand.
Well, never mind then.
Okay. Mr. Pompa.
Any reason why we don't have the summer school dates on here?
Well, that's something that we will put on the next calendar, but I think it's because of the time that we present our calendar and publish it, you know, we don't have those dates available at that time.
So when you say the next one,
Yeah, this
next year, or
calendar,
like?
no, this calendar, we can look at putting it on there.
Mr. Pompa, it's dependent on the calendar that's adopted, so then we set our summer school based on the last day of school and things like that. So once we adopt
approve
it,
it.
we set our summer school dates.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Mr. Hibbs. Dr. Reich. Please vote. Um, 6-1, the motion passes. Thank you. Next, we have items to be withdrawn from the consent agenda. Are there any items to be withdrawn from the consent?
Motion to approve consent agenda?
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sullins, second by Mr. Hogg to approve the consent. Yeah, I thought you did, but you didn't say anything.
I wanted to withdraw something. I'd like to withdraw 13-1101-255, lobbyist services.
Oops.
They have already made a motion and seconded. You're going to have to...
There was already a request to withdraw items, and there wasn't an answer, so I went ahead and made the motion.
Okay, well, can you,
Withdraw the motion.
All right, Mrs. Sullins has withdrawn her motion. Mrs. Pena?
and I would like to pull item 13-11-01-255, lobbyist services, for separate consideration.
Thank you.
Motion to approve minus the item Ms. Pena removed.
Second.
Motion by Mrs. Sullivan, second by Mr. Hogg to approve the consent as published, with the exception of item 13-11-01-255 lobbyist services, which we will consider separately. Any further discussion? Please vote. Oh, Mrs. Powell.
Thank
We got
you.
so caught up in
Peter.
the moment
I did
there.
that once.
How you doing?
Great.
Thank you.
President Barron, board members, Dr. Cavazos, good evening. It's my privilege this evening to report that our schools have received donations from the following individuals and organizations. The Indian American Community of Dallas-Fort Worth metro area, the Arlington High School Choir Booster Club, the Arlington High School Wrestling Booster Club, Youth Service America, DBR Publishing, Bowie High School Girls Basketball Booster Club, the Bowie High School Football Booster Club, the Bowie High School Baseball Booster Club, Lamar High School Drill Team Booster Club, Lamar High School Volleyball Booster Club, Lamar High School Band Booster Club, Lamar High School Golf Booster Club, Lamar High School Girls Soccer Booster Club, Arlington Stadium, Pantego Lions Foundation, Target Take Charge of Education, Seguin High School Band Booster Club, the Seguin High School Drill Team Booster Club, Clifford and Beverly Jacobs, Life Touch National Studios, Office Max, Foster Elementary School PTA, the Hill Elementary School PTA, Little Elementary School PTA, University of Texas, Moore Elementary School PTA, and Chick-fil-A. And also SFG Finance, Rush Creek Baptist Church, Walmart, Beta Sigma Phi, Swift Elementary School PTA, Rotary Club of Arlington, and Arlington Elks Lodge number 2114. The donations presented this evening for consideration are $80,589, which brings our year-to-date total to $437,491. There are also 6 bids on the agenda this evening for consideration, and in all cases, the administration is recommending the lowest bids and the bids representing the best value to the district.
Thank you, Mrs. Powell. I apologize for skipping over you.
That's quite all right.
And thank you to our generous community. We sure appreciate it. Now, we have a motion and a second. Please vote on the consent. Consent passes 6 blank. Mr. Pompa had to step out. He'll be right back. Thank you. Mrs. Pena, you're on.
In regards to that item, we discussed this in our work session prior to the closing and then back to the opening. And Dr. Reich, since you're chair of the legislative committee, you know what all my questions and concerns are for the most part. So if you'd just like to go over the process so the public knows how we went from the committee to the point now of selecting a lobbyist, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, no problem.
You really want to give him an open mic?
Yes, for this I do.
Dr. Reich.
All right. Here we go. We went through an extensive process as a committee. Our Legislative Affairs Committee was comprised of myself as chair, Mr. Hogg, Mr. Pompa, and Dr. Cavazos. And we went through and discussed what we need for being more legislatively smart and what we can do regarding advocacy for our district and our children, and what the most efficient process that could be. In regards to lobbyists specifically, we had lots of discussions and interviews related to what is best for our district as far as the size of the firm, because there are, regarding those that have more experience in the education realm, they're either smaller or they're very large. And so we really had to decide who do we want to be with us and help us and guide us. And we did end up choosing a larger firm, a very large firm actually. And the concern that we had, as Ms. Pena brought up in the dinner session, was, well, how, if they have a large bandwidth of clients, is there a potential for conflicts of interest when they may have another client possibly paying them more dollars, maybe not, representing their interests over ours? And we really, in going through the interview process, made sure that that was flushed out. And this particular firm made it very clear that legally, as part of the process, they have to let us know, as well as the other client, that there's a conflict there and it has to be sorted out. They made it very clear that when they look at clients, they try their hardest to not entertain offers for new clients that might not be in line, for the most part, of what their already existing client base is. And we seem to fit that. Obviously, that doesn't cover all scenarios. And what they said is, if there is, should the situation arise, then we will be notified immediately. There will never be a situation that would come up where they would say lobby at the Hill on one of their clients' behalf. That would be a completely opposite view of what we want for advocacy for our district. So it was very well addressed. We went through a scoring process through interviews. We went through much deliberation. I really want to thank the committee for all of the time. One of the positive results out of this, besides increased advocacy for us, which is paramount, is getting this board in tune and cognizant of what the legislative process is completely, legislation 101, if you will. And this firm will provide us that and provide our whole board the opportunity to learn that process, to be engaged in that process, to develop our legislative agenda together in a work session type environment. And then also the expectations that this firm has that we realized as a committee going forth is that we as trustees will have more skin in this game, meaning we are going to have to do more testimony down in Austin, especially towards the latter part of the session, and that will require maybe a rotational calendar for us to go down there and testify, and that firm will have our remarks ready to go. Another requirement that was kind of mutual and is mutually beneficial is for us to be in the loop constantly. So a requirement to have at a minimum our committee or myself as chair and our superintendent's cell phones right away accessible if they need to contact us and we need to give guidance. It's there ready to go. And likewise, they are available to us pretty much 24/7. Whatever we define as a need, they will address. So I think that's kind of the abridged version. I hope that covers all the gaps. It was a very, very thorough process. Very excited that we're going to be doing this. It's absolutely necessary, and I look forward to some great things happening on our behalf personally as a district because of these efforts that we've gone through.
Thank you, Dr. Rice. Mrs. Pena.
I want to thank the committee as well. I just wanted to make sure that this is a new item that hasn't been on our agenda for years, and I wanted the community to understand what work went into it, how we went through the process, and the care given to ensure that our district is very well represented because this is coming into a very important legislative period for us, and we need to be on top of the game. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll make a motion to accept.
I thought coming out of, well, I guess it's a separate item pulled, so that's fine,
Yes.
and I'll second that.
Motion by Mrs. Pena, second by Dr. Rice to accept item 13-1101255, lobbyist services. If there's no further discussion, please vote. The item passes 7-0. Thank you. No further discussion items. The next is open forum for non-agenda items. This second open forum segment of the meeting provides citizens with an opportunity to address the trustees on any subject except personnel. This is not intended to be a discussion or a debate, and trustees will not respond to the speakers. Derogatory comments aimed at an individual will not be tolerated. I have one card from the audience. When your name is called, please step to the podium. You will have 5 minutes to speak. A lighted timer on the podium will assist you in pacing your presentation. A yellow light will illuminate when there's 1 minute remaining. When the red light comes on and the buzzer sounds, please end your presentation. Our speaker tonight is George Mizell. His subject is Programs for Challenged Students. Good evening, Mr. Mizell.
Good evening, President, board members, Dr. Cavazos. I know whenever I made the comment card, I wasn't fully informed and aware of what all the different agenda items were, or I probably would have been up here earlier in the evening, because in lieu of some of the discussions I've heard, that kind of ties with what I'm up here about. As far as the public awareness of what the community input on certain items could or should be, there seems, at least to my opinion, in the modern day times, a huge reliance upon the internet and modern technology to get that information out to the public in an effort to get them in to respond, whereas once upon a time I can remember getting letters in the mail saying this is getting ready to happen. And so I guess I sort of tend to lean towards getting that old-fashioned notification of events happening versus the newer, more modern. And so therefore I wasn't aware, like I said, I would have been up here. So unfortunately, I'm a little saddened at one of the passings of earlier in the evening, but stepping aside from that, I will say that hopefully in the future that possibly the board and or somebody that they have conjunctions with could possibly maybe entertain the idea of putting mailings in the mail about items like this so that those that don't rely so heavily on the internet can still have an awareness of what's going on here and be able to come up and be a voice for the community, whereas I heard you say this evening that there doesn't seem to be much of that in certain areas. But tying to my subject about the programs for challenge students in schools, I don't know if it's a standardization issue, which then again ties to the device issue thing earlier. The standardization between the schools about how they deal with certain issues and so forth and so on is left to a large degree on the individual school system or the school entity itself versus a district-wide rule and regulation system. I find myself as a parent of a child in the Arlington school system very frustrated at times and unsure of where and how to go to deal with certain situations because I always get different answers. And I say, well, you know, when my child was in the elementary school system, this is how things go. Well, this is a different school, a different, you know, level of education. At the junior high level, we do things differently. And I'm thinking, but this is all within one school district. How can it be so vastly different in certain areas, like who to complain to, the chain of command to go above and beyond if you're not getting the satisfactory answers at one level, who do I go to next, so forth and such. So like I said, that is very frustrating on my part because I don't know who to turn to on a lot of the times of, you know, when I seem to hit a roadblock. And that is in that I have a student who has been never diagnosed as being attention deficit, you know, or anything of that nature, but she has been diagnosed as being borderline this or borderline that, which then, you know, I guess it's the 514 program that parents are able to get their children involved in if they meet certain criteria. And even in getting in that area, it still seems to fall largely behind the teacher's willingness to do things versus there being a more uniform, they must do under certain things to be able to make sure that the student, because my daughter seems to be falling further and further behind in her skills, so that I'm afraid that she's going to end up being one of those that unfortunately are the ones that's left behind because she doesn't continue to stay with, you know, her grade level in her reading and math skill areas. And so just, I mean, as far as, I'm unsure as whether it needs to be more incentives to the teachers to give them, more drive to work with the students on an individual basis, or if, you know, I don't know what the fix is, but somehow or another there needs to be something in place, because I know Title I has extra programs for the students in those schools. Can we, you know, possibly address adding something to the other schools that don't have Title I to give the students that are struggling a leg up above and beyond what's already there for them? And then a bigger open communication between parents and the teachers and or administrations at those schools for the parents that are interested in trying to help their student excel in an area they can't seem to excel with what's available to them right now. And so with that, I beg upon the board to consider different forms of communication with the community to involve them with this process through different avenues other than what's currently available and new programs possibly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mazzella. If you'd stick around afterwards, we'll be done here in just a few minutes. Thank you. Superintendent's report. Dr. Cavazos.
Thank you, President Barron. I have some information to share with the board. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to meet with a 7th grader and 8th grader from each of our junior highs to get input on the issues important to them and to find out how we can make their school experience better. I received a good amount of valuable input from the students, and they represented our junior highs in an exceptional manner. And there's a picture of them. It was costume day on some of the campuses. That's why you have Superman there. Some of the topics we discussed was school safety, participation in extracurricular activities, how they felt about their classwork and whether it was challenging to them. And this feedback I'll share that with the junior high principals and then keep the dialogue going. It's an important way of obtaining feedback from students, as we know that that's important. The AISD was recognized last month at the Clean Air Through Energy Efficiency Conference for the efforts of our Energy Committee. We received an outstanding individual award and we're the only school district in the state to receive such an award. So I want to thank the Energy Department and Bob Carlisle and Jennifer for the work that they do. The AISD has once again received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting Award from the Association of School Business Officials International and the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting from the Government Finance Officers Association. These awards represent a very significant achievement and reflect the AISD's commitment to the highest standards of school system financial reporting. At this time, I'd like to invite Tony Drollinger, Executive Director of Finance, to come forward to receive these awards, and we want to thank you for your hard work and your department's hard work on behalf of all of the school districts. So, Mr. Barron, if you join me, we have awards for Tony. Mr. Drollinger, congratulations to you and your department.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Of course, these awards are not for me exactly. What these awards represent is the audit report that was presented earlier this evening. Every year we submit that to these two different organizations. The two different organizations put it through a rigorous checklist to determine whether or not they believe it meets their criteria for an excellent report. And so far, I think this is the 33rd year for GFOA and like the 23rd or 28th consecutive year for ASBO. So it's a long-standing tradition that we get this award, and it's due to the accounting folks and Brent West and the whole staff, really. So it's the credit's due to them. Thank you.
That concludes my report.
Board members. Quick. Mr. Hogg.
Thank you, President Barron. Just one thing I'll bring up real quick. Dr. Cavazos and I both had the privilege, and I thought he was going to throw it in his report, but he was probably waiting for me. We had the privilege to get to speak at Bowie High School last Friday? I think so. Someday last week. 10 minutes over, should curriculum be included, should character be taught in the curriculum to all the sophomore English students at Bowie High School. It's a pretty detailed speech we had to give. We each had to talk 10 minutes and go back to our academia days and really put some thought and note our references and where they came from. So I thank Ms. Moorhead for planning that in the Bowie High School community. It's really what a way to get parents and students and everyone actively involved in the school. Good job on your speech, Dr. Cavazos.
Did you all win?
There was no winner or loser, but there was, Dr. Cavazos and I spoke both on the reason character should be taught in the curriculum, and then another staff member, it was not her belief, but she had to give the opposing point of view of why character should not be taught, and Dr. Cavazos and I are both glad we didn't get the opposing point of view we had to give. So there was no winner.
Mr. Hibbs.
I had the opportunity to be out at about 4 different campuses, but 2 yesterday, and I want to thank our Justice of the Peace, Matt Hayes, that performed a truancy hearing on campus at Sam Houston yesterday. If we could have bottled the words that when he was addressing the 21 students there that had to come before his court, he really put in perspective to them that education is important, that education is a privilege that's given to every child in America. But with it, once you're enrolled, it's a crime not to attend. But he said the larger crime and this is what really stuck home with me, was that with an education, many doors are open for you. But without that education, all you are going to face is struggles and challenges. He's one that was very compassionate. He was very firm with the students, but very compassionate. And I think the students walked away with that with a clear understanding that they need their diploma. And he has a willingness with his court that once the child receives their diploma, they'll be able to have that expunged from their record. So that's a neat thing. But I was able to go from that, which was a little bit, disappointing in ways to see kids have to face that, to Cooking Learning Center. And if you have not had the opportunity to visit our Learning Center here in the district, Connie Spence is doing an amazing job there. Just as I was getting there, they were completing a sock hop, and all the students, all the teachers were dressed up in their pajamas and just having a time that these kids, there wasn't a face that didn't have a grin from ear to ear. And that's a true learning experience at that school with some children that are facing a lot of difficulties and handicaps. So I appreciate what Ms. Spence and her staff is doing at Cooking. And then the last thing that I would say is I spoke on the Education Foundation, just brought it up to a point that one of my colleagues were asking about ways of being able to give grants to the classrooms and such. I was surprised that people actually watch us on TV. And I had about 25 people that sent in or was asking more about the Education Foundation and the opportunities. We as a district, I would love for, in our communications, as we move out with the strategic plan, as we move out with different things, that we really make sure that our teachers and principals have full knowledge of the Education Foundation and the potential for the grants that they offer. Their group is very unique because everything doesn't necessarily go to the teacher, it goes back to the classroom. So because those grants are written specifically for teachers in their classroom. So I look forward to seeing hundreds of submissions from classrooms all over the district next year.
Mrs. Pena.
It's been a long time since we had this on our agenda, since we've had the work session a couple of weeks ago, and so
It's been a month, yeah.
Yeah, it's been quite a lot of things. So I'm hoping I'm all-inclusive. I didn't miss too many things out in here, but I'll just go across the ones I think are noteworthy. I attended the Ministry Across Racial Lines. That there was a meeting which I think all of us were invited, but Dr. Cavazos was on the panel. And it was very interesting to hear the different ministries, because it's like an ecumenical service in which different people give their opinions. And the two other individuals on the panel were who, Dr. Cavazos? Yourself?
Reverend Glaspie.
And?
I don't remember his name.
I think he's the president of the Ministerial Association.
Yeah.
So they talked about how important it was to get the message across, and that we all need to be united in our faith. And that was the strong message there. Also attended a Hispanic assembly at Lynn Hale Elementary, and I was made an honorary hurricane, which was very nice. It was my 4th year to be a speaker for the kids. And they're wonderful. One little girl started crying when I talked about the tornado that hit my house. And I stopped because she was sobbing in the crowd. She was so sympathetic to the fact that my daughter was in the house when the tornado had hit. She just started crying. I felt bad. I thought maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Then I attended the United Hispanic Banquet, the United Hispanic Council of Tarrant County's banquet, and Mr. Barron and Dr. Rice, you were there, weren't you? You didn't make it this year?
Mrs. Solons was there.
You made it? United Hispanic Council of Tarrant County?
Oh.
Okay. I think it was just you and I and Dr. Cavazos as well. And then the PTA fun run, I came and observed and brought my dogs so they could watch with me. And then I attended Breakfast with Champions with Dr. Cavazos that same day. And I just received a very nice thank you note from the Colts for having attended that event. And then the United Way hometown huddle at Short Elementary with Mrs. Sullins. We went there, and it was great to see the Dallas Cowboys come in and participate. It's a movement to eliminate obesity in our youth, and that was a great activity. And there were several of us at the Asian American Chamber Annual Awards Banquet. I believe it was Mrs. Sullins, Mr. Barron, Dr. Cavazos. I think we even, oh well, I was going to say we had our spouses with us, but my nephew was my date. And that was a great event. We had a really good time there. And Dr. Cavazos, again, was awarded the Educator Award. And AISD received an award that Mr. Barron received on our behalf. That's my report.
Thank you.
I love being retired.
Well, besides doing a couple of those things, I worked at my school, we have a DREAM Act program where we do the paperwork for our students who are over 15 and need to get their paperwork in order to become legally here. And last Saturday, we did paperwork for about 35 students. And student by student, we saved them about $1,000, which is what a lawyer would charge them to do this same paperwork. And it's coming up again this Saturday. So something's going on there. And the Asian banquet was truly fun. The costumes were unbelievable. The gold was everywhere. Which was a good time. That's it. Okay, Mr. Secretary, what you got for us?
I only have the one item on the Bring Your Own Technology implementation. That central office obtains a copy of every campus's personal use policy on file, and that'll be done in conjunction with the rollout of that. That's it.
I get concurrence from over here. We're going to go into closed session, and we will not be returning into open session. This meeting is adjourned.